I'm eating a Reese's Nutrageous candy bar. Chocolate candy, peanuts, peanut butter, and caramel. And lots of salt. Lots of salt. I think that's really the winning combination. It's the sugar balanced by the salt.
Did I talk about this recently? One of my favorite Simpson clips is when Homer sits down with his jar of honey roasted peanuts. And he reads the ingredients. The ingredients are salt, honey roast flavoring, and pressed peanut sweepings.
It's delectable.
It is. It's stunning. Nice. So why are you eating a candy bar? What?
Because I'm just feeling under the weather. And so the sugar kind of gives me a little energy bump so that I can have a conversation.
So you don't like pass out in front of the mic.
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The color doesn't drain entirely from my face and then I kind of flop on the floor. Though that might make an excellent podcast event. I don't know.
I think it'd be better if we had video, but we don't have video.
We don't have video.
No, we just got our audio stuff.
I don't know if we would have guests if we had video. If we told them, well, you're going to be recorded, everybody would primp and preen and get nervous.
Yeah, you're right. There is a benefit to all audio. There really is.
Yeah. I mean, just anyway. At least for guests. But we're missing out on the whole YouTube video thing. I might be able to find a way to get around that. There is a program that can sort of create like animated. If I create some animated icons of our heads talking, like mouth open, mouth closed. I don't know. I might be able to do something.
Why do we do that?
So we can put it on YouTube so that it would be a podcast on YouTube, because YouTube wants to get into podcasting because they're canceling Google Podcasts in favor of YouTube, like getting all your podcasts on YouTube.
Okay, but I see lots of videos where it's just a slate.
Yeah. I mean,
why is we could just put a slate up.
We could certainly put a slate up or just the still image of the faces, during the recording. Yeah.
Right.
So,
okay.
I mean, that's possible.
That's it. Are we out of ideas?
Yeah. That's the entirety. Good night.
Good night, everybody. We got nothing.
Yep.
No, I just came back from Sacramento. I think I told you that, right?
No.
Yeah, I went to Sacramento for a family event. I'd never been to Sacramento before. It is exquisite.
Really? Lovely place?
I've never thought of
Sacramento. Okay. Yeah.
No, really, really, really gorgeous place. I really enjoyed it. And it's just, fiendishly expensive in some ways, certainly compared to Syracuse. It's like Syracuse a lot, except that the weather's a lot nicer.
Interesting.
But it's still the wide, very beautiful, beautiful trees. I mean, magnificent trees, including California redwoods. I mean, those towering evergreen trees, which are fabulous. Wide streets lined with trees, with architecture from the 1940s and the 1920s. No billboards, none of that stuff. It really struck me a lot like Syracuse, except it's 70 degrees instead of 50 degrees right now.
Sequoia would be an excellent Wordle word, except that it's 6 letters.
I don't think you're really listening to me. I think you're.
I'm picking out words and then I'm reacting.
I don't think that advanced the arc of my narrative in any way whatsoever.
No, what you're saying is getting through my ears, but
you just don't care.
It hits my brain, and my brain is just not functioning. And that causes the categorical mismatch.
So they have a 35-mile long park along the American River, which I biked part of. And it was gorgeous. Gorgeous, beautiful path. Actually, it's like 3 different paths along the river. There's like a high path, a middle path, and a low path.
What brought you out to Sacramento? Why did you?
A family event.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I don't want to say anything more than that.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was a family event that took place in a park in Sacramento. It was a marriage, and it took place in a park in Sacramento. And the newlyweds actually I shouldn't say it, but they got a photograph with Gavin Newsom. Oh. Yeah, it was great. It was a lot. I wasn't there. I mean, people like me don't get that close to that stuff, but it was lovely. All joking aside, it was lovely, lovely time. And I just like Sacramento a lot. I thought it was really great. If I had like $1 million lying around, I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Nice.
So that was nice. And now I'm back in Syracuse, which I love too. Syracuse is a great place too.
Excellent. Yeah. Do you have any new favorite cafes? Have you discovered anything new that in Syracuse that you want to mention?
Well, no, just the usual places we go. I mean, there's a place like there's Recess Coffee. There's a whole. So you remember in Philly they had South Street, right? You know, South Street, which was like the hipper vibe. That's Westcott in Syracuse. Okay. There's an area called Westcott, and the sort of the epicenter of Westcott is about 10 blocks from where I live. Perfect walk. It's a 15-minute walk there. Get my coffee, walk back. It's magnifico.
Is there still a place called Happy Endings? There was a club that I used to play called Happy Endings.
I don't know.
It might have been like a cafe bakery.
I do not know.
I'm looking it up. Endings, Syracuse. Do it. No, it closed. Oh well, bummer.
Oh well. The place that my daughter and I have been to at least 3 times, if not 4 times, is Kitty Hoynes Irish Bar in downtown, which is really great.
Huh.
It really is. There's a lot of hustle and bustle, and they got some really. It's a good place. They got Guinness on tap, and they got good food. The people are always nice to us when we get there, and it's always a little loud, but not horribly so.
Right.
So anyway, no new places. Not really. Yeah. No, I was in Syracuse the past weekend, and the weekend before that, where was I? I was somewhere else. I was at your place.
Yeah. You were here in Boston.
I was in Boston, then I was in Syracuse. So I haven't been Sacramento, so I haven't been doing a lot of exploring. But I did read a book.
Oh, what did you read?
I read 2 books.
Oh,
I think I told you. So I read one of the books that I think, was it Sarah suggested or one of our esteemed prior guests?
Yeah, Sarah Elkins.
Right. I don't know if it's Sarah that suggested this one, but the author is a Polish author who won the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Called Olga Tokarczuk, and I'm probably murdering the name.
Yeah.
And the name of the book is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. It's because it has that thing, we've talked about many times before. It has that one thing that I now realize every book I really like has to have, which is it has a great sense of humor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's very, very funny. It's very much sort of that Eastern European sense of humor. Did you ever read any of the Martin Cruz Smith books like Gorky Park and Polar Star? And they're fabulous because Martin Cruz Smith has this character. Well, he has the main character, which is Arkady Renko.
Yeah.
And there's just he's a very specific person with just this incredibly defeatist sense of wit. And what he does is that his primary thing that he does is that when he's caught in a tight situation, he complicates it. Mm-hmm. And that's how he confounds everybody, is that when he's stuck in a tight circle, he just makes it worse for himself, and it really throws people off. And there's something very sort of fatalist Eastern European about the entire thing. And she has that vibe.
Okay.
And it's a murder mystery.
Yeah.
And it takes place in a small community in Poland. And a lot of it is about, it's incredible. It centers on one character, and you're inside that one character's head a lot. Huh. And it's a very unusual place to live. And it's a lot about animal rights and how we treat animals. And it's about corruption. And it's about being ignored. And it's very, very funny, and very true. And I think it's definitely worth people's time if they want to read that one.
I'll read it because
you don't have to. I'm just saying.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Your plosives are plosive. Yes.
Okay. How's that? Any better?
That is. Yeah. Maybe split the difference on that.
How about that? Is that better? Okay.
That's good, but okay. Can you turn the volume up now a little bit?
What is this?
It's our sound check after the fact, but you kind of twisted the knob since we did.
Fine.
Oh God.
This is impossible. I can't work under these conditions.
I just it's I can't fix the plosives.
How about that? Is that better?
That's good. Just don't pee. Don't
what? Don't
explode.
Pee? What? You're the one who just hit the head.
Fine.
How's that?
Yeah,
is that bad?
That's just great.
No, seriously.
Everybody loves that. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. If you do it right into the diaphragm.
But I'm trying to do it past.
No, that was good. It was good when you did it past. When you said, okay, that's probably good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's much
better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we should have like 20 minutes of this.
Yeah, just adjusting the mic, and we can change the name of the podcast to adjusting the mic.
You know what? We'd have a dedicated fan base.
Just
the more ridiculous, the more inconsequential, the more inexplicable the things that we do in this podcast, the greater. Yeah.
How about now? Is this better? Wait, I've got an idea. Hold on. Wait, I'm gonna.
What are you gonna do?
I think I've got it now. How does that sound?
So Olga has written many books.
Okay.
And I started reading another one called The Books of Jacob. And that one didn't thrill me as much because first off the bat, it's 900 pages. And second off the bat, it's sort of kind of the same vibe. It's about these obsessive characters, like these people who are really obsessive and their obsessions. And that can get a little claustrophobic after a while. In Drive Your Plow, and there's a lot of wit. There's a lot of levity, but there's a lot of really sad stuff in it. It's really it's clever. It's an interesting book. It's interesting to see. And the trick is that it's in a translation, so who knows how it really sounds. Yeah. I don't really trust translations. Who knows?
But Sarah attested to the idea that there was a Polish reader that she knew that was reading it, and that she was reading it in English, and found it to be. I don't know if she was doing comparative between the Polish and the English, but.
Well, the funny thing is that there's a whole section. Oh, I'm sorry. There's another big thing that flows. The artistic keel of the entire book is the poetry of William Blake.
Oh, okay.
Are you familiar with him?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, the songs of innocence and experience and stuff like that. And there's a wonderfully, and then this is, of course, Jorge is always sort of lurking around whenever always lurking around because one of the things in the book is the narrator and one of her friends sitting at the coffee table translating William Blake from English into Polish. Mm-hmm. And then saying, is that the right words? Because you could rephrase William Blake's thing as three different ways. And so they took a William Blake's thing, and then it gets rephrased three times. But of course, we're reading an English translation of Olga's book.
Of the translation into Polish. Right.
And so what you read is you read one thing in English and then three other things in English. But what they're supposed to be is, and then you just get hopelessly. And then, of course, what that triggers to me is an article I read about when Madonna, this is an article from like 30 years ago when Madonna came out with this book called Sex. Yeah. And what happened was there was something, it was an article called Lost in Translation where Madonna was being interviewed by somebody Hungarian, and the interview was being but the interviewer had read an article of Madonna's that had been written in English, then or written in French and then translated Hungarian. And the first question out of the interviewer's mouth was, "Why'd you call your new book Slut?" And Madonna said, "No, it's not called Slut. It's called Sex." And they said, "Well, not here. It's called Slut." And the interview just goes downhill from there.
That's wild. That's so funny. Yeah, the danger of having your book translated. Interestingly, there is someone in Japan who's translating my first novel, just on a voluntary basis. And hopefully I'll hear back from her. And that would be interesting. But I would have no way, except if I go through my friend Mamie, to like check it. So I said I would approve it, but I would have to ask my friend Mamie to read through it and make sure that it somehow matched up with what I was doing.
Yeah. I mean that's a rabbit hole that's a million miles deep. which is and that also sort of triggers thoughts of Douglas Hofstadter, who wrote Gödel, Escher, Bach, and wrote Metamagical Themas, and
the set of all sets that do not contain themselves.
Yeah, it's Bertrand Russell's paradox. Yeah. And what Hofstadter talked about was, how do you translate Jabberwocky into French?
Right. Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Well, you have to do it very artistically. You really have to kind of reinvent it. Yeah. There's no other way. Yeah. It's that sort of Edward Lear and that whole movement of playing with language and playing with the English language, and then how do you kind of make that work in other languages? So there's no universal code for the brain. You can't do a one-to-one comparison.
No. And so, speaking of playing with words, so after I read Olga's book, I read 13 Clocks that you turned me on to. Yeah. Wow.
What a book.
Yeah. What an interesting book. What sort of an indescribable book. Yes. I mean, it's lovely, but you can't put your finger on it. It's really interesting. It just occupies this weird sort of netherworld. Yeah. And I hardly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman calls it the best book ever written. And it's interesting, there is this political commentator, Keith Olbermann, who is also a sports commentator, who does a podcast now, and he includes some sports stuff and he gripes about working in media, and then on every Friday he reads Thurber. He reads a story from James Thurber.
Yeah.
But he has not touched the 13 Clocks. He's read, I think, all of his short stories, but will not take a chapter out of the 13 Clocks to read. I think some of that it's just some of the best writing ever. It's so much fun. And the structure of it, the poetry of it, the repetition, the characters, it's lovely.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun. I had a great time reading that one. So what do you got?
I would love to turn it into a musical, actually. I think
it would be a fabulous musical. It'd be. Yeah. I'm absolutely amazed that it hasn't been turned into a musical.
I've heard that it was done once at a high school, but it doesn't exist anywhere. That doesn't exist anywhere. So maybe take another crack at it. I have a couple of songs written for it, but
that'd be great.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I don't really know how to write a musical, but that hasn't stopped me.
Let's have a show.
I know. I am so not a musical guy. Although I love Chicago and Sweeney Todd and the darker musicals I love. But not. I think it would be fun. I think it would be a blast. Do
you know any? Do you know any of those? Because that's a particular tribe.
Oh, I know.
Do you know any of those people?
Do I know musical people? Yeah, I know some. Yeah, sure.
Actually, you should talk to Bob, because Bob knows Bob knows some of those hardcore Broadway people. I think he knows one. She's this singer, and she's just right there. It's like, okay, and a 1 and a 2. Let's hooray for Hollywood. That whole thing. That's what you need. You need those people who are totally jazzed about musicals.
I would also have to get permission from the Thurber's family, right? Whoever is in charge of his memory. And unfortunately, it probably means writing the whole musical and then finding out that they don't want me to do it. But it's a risk worth taking, probably.
Or if you just write one tune, you write one song and send it to them and say, hey, look, am I walking off the cliff here?
Yeah, exactly. Is this
I wouldn't write the entire thing and then ask if it was okay. I'd maybe test the waters and say, here we go. And they'll probably say, well, anyway, who knows what they would say?
A lot of things would be lost. There's just so much that happens in the book. It's not a long book. It's quite short, but there's so much that happens that you some of which you just couldn't, a clock in the town, a bell from a clock in the town dropped its lonesome tone. The spy disappeared into the night like a fly into the mouth of a frog. There's just wonderful sentences in there that are impossible.
So would you need to have a narrator?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. It could also, the narrator could be the Golux. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it seems to me like it would be ripe.
Yeah.
But who knows? So that's good. I read that.
Yeah, good book. I have not been reading so much. I have really gotten into this YouTube artist, thinker and philosopher and historian, Andrewism. And, anything you find on YouTube is highly suspect. But a friend of mine pointed out, it was Michael Miner who had read my books, and he said, you should really check out Andrewism's video on the barter economy, the myth of the barter economy. And I did, and I was immediately hooked. It's this wonderful, he has a Trinidadian accent, and he just tears apart, traditional understandings of economics, of family, the history of family, the history of money, the history of community, of civilization. And he's a solar punk activist. So he believes in, libraries of everything, or a library society, library economy as a path into the future that is sustainable. And it's very interesting. So I became a supporter of his on Patreon, and I've been checking out his videos, which are all really quite good. Andrewism. Saint Andrew, I believe, on social media in a lot of places. I don't know. On Patreon, it's not St. Andrew, is it? I can find out in a second. I think you can find him under Andrewism. Yeah. So Saint Drew, that's it. Saint Drew, and he's working on a book, and he's quite popular. But it'd be lovely to have him on the pod if he would be willing.
Sure.
Yeah. Interesting thinker, interesting guy, like a Mardo for our times, sort of helping us to piece together history in a sane way.
So, give me some highlights. Like what?
A lot of what was great about the video on the barter economy. These videos are just pictures and mostly him just talking in essay form. Clearly, he's written it all out beforehand. And in the myth of the barter economy, the upshot is that what we think of as the barter economy preceding the dawn of money, to fix the ways in which it didn't work, is just an invention of Smith, of Birth of Nations, Adam Smith, and of Aristotle, and more or less people who are trying to justify capitalism, or whatever earlier forms of relying on exchange and markets. And what he comes to is, if you actually look at the archaeological history, barter didn't exist except when people were sailing to a place and they had goods and they were coming to a place that didn't share the same currency. It's a post-currency event in most cases, where people don't have the same currency. Say, like explorers arrive at Tahiti, and they have some things that they think the people in Tahiti will want, and then they trade them for other goods that the people in Tahiti have. Well, that's one example of barter, but that doesn't work over.
It's not a system.
Yeah, it's not a system. And in some cases, people who are doing trade, traders who are traveling, would exchange and barter, but only when they were certain that they were traveling to a place where there was another merchant who would have exactly what they needed. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of predetermined. So that's also not a global system. And in a local system, that's not how things worked at all, right? You don't sort of do this, I'll give you 2 cows and you give me a goat and some pineapples and I'll take that and I'll get some pumpkins. That's actually not how people who know each other would operate. They would operate on a system of kind of loose credit with each other. And so what he comes down to is that what probably existed amongst people in tribes and throughout a lot of the agricultural development of humanity was the gifting economy. And there is evidence for that. There's archaeological evidence, and there's evidence of it in modern history as well. And the gifting economy is so close to what I'm writing in my books, except that it's a non-technological gifting economy. You sort of get a sense of who's more generous with their gifts, who's able to be more generous, who's who is less generous, and then there's a kind of flow toward the generosity. And that's fascinating. So I'm not doing it justice. I think you'd have to watch the whole thing to get where he's coming from. But the myth of the bartering as being kind of this broken system that was fixed by the introduction of coins is, according to him, a myth. So fascinating. And then there's other pieces on, he does a lot on solar punk, and he does a lot on the dawn of agriculture. Solar punk is, the books that I'm writing are solar punk novels. So they are different from steampunk and different from cyberpunk. So solar punk is more of a hopeful visioning of the future. It can have downsides. There are a number of novels that would be called solar punk that also, that aren't entirely utopian, but they do involve sort of a coexistence in nature and sustainable forms of living.
Oh. And are there some classics of the genre?
I don't know that it's been around long enough to have classics. It was sort of postulated in the 1970s, I believe. I don't know the history of solar punk. No, it might have been later than that. It might have been in the 1990s, but it because I think it started with a blog post, right? There weren't blog posts in 1970. So I believe it was sort of, we need to create a kind of thinking that is solar punk, that is not cyberpunk and is not steampunk. So it would have been an offshoot of both of those.
Right.
And it is more than just writing. It really is more of a general philosophy, way of life, that I think people want to embody this ideology of libraries of everything, where you don't go and buy an electric drill, you go and take it out from the library. Sure. And then you don't store an electric drill. And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
The advantages of having a common repository for shared items, where you're held accountable if you wreck it, right? You wreck the book, you have to pay for it. The library has certain mechanisms in place that encourage not exactly ethical behavior, but considerate behavior, right? Neighborliness. You don't return the book late, and you don't mess up the book, and you return it in the same condition as you borrowed it, etc. And that would also extend to cars, or whatever, electric bikes, whatever it is that the Library of Things would have. And I look forward to having Lee Hurwitz on. And I don't know if she's done much thought about Library of Things, but she's a librarian at Brooklyn Public Library that has been working on its Books Unbanned project that has gotten a lot of press. And actually, Lee has been in high demand, but I do know her personally, so she's willing to come and talk to us. So I think that's happening in November.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole, we talked about, I think, me personally, I think one of the great things possibly about the Library of Things is drones.
Yeah.
So I can drop stuff off for you. Because that's the problem with the Library of Things is like, why do we buy this crap? Well, because so it's right there when we need it.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that you need like a broom. You're gonna have a broom.
No,
you're gonna have your own broom. And you're gonna have it in the house. And there's things where you're not gonna buy a carpet cleaner.
Right.
But between those two things, there's a wide range of objects and things which you only need occasionally to do stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it in the hardware, sort of like the tool world. But maybe you're throwing a fancy party and you need a blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but I have a problem. There is a basic problem with drones. There are many problems with drones. I think Amazon tried to do the drone delivery and it totally went nowhere. One of the big problems is noise.
Mm-hmm.
The noise of the drone, the intrusiveness of it, these things kind of flying around, some drone at eye level just coming into land, like whacking some kid in the face. And there's issues with that, but maybe it's possible. And now we're moving much more sort of in the direction of the merit economy, but maybe it's possible to incentivize people to deliver things from the Library of Everything on foot. I would say, get up and take a walk, right? It's the library. It's the library.
I know.
You'll meet
I
people.
know. Well, yeah, unless the person's like across town. But I think you got to try it out. I mean, you got to get it going. I think drones would help a lot. I think, and if the sky is black with drones and they're flying like flies, maybe we need to rethink this whole thing.
You think about the average number of Amazon deliveries that take place in a given day at any given address. I think the drone thing would get pretty bad pretty fast.
Well, one way to find out. We can do a test.
We'll just do it.
Do a test and see how many bodies hit the ground. But one of the key things that people are used to now is immediacy.
Yeah,
I need a 3/16" bit.
I know.
Now, what's interesting is that people will get in a car and they will drive to Home Depot.
Right.
I'm not
to buy that damn thing.
Right.
Yeah,
and they'll drive pretty far.
I mean,
right. And you could, if you really wanted something, you could get in there. But the thing is that Home Depot is a fun place to go. I mean, I go there for entertainment, quite frankly.
Well, then that's how the library needs to be.
The library has to be entertaining.
Yeah,
it has to be. It has to have a coffee bar in it or something like that.
They actually do a lot of them, and Boston Public Library is really pretty fantastic that way. And there are branches, so there's not a single library; there are multiple libraries.
Right.
And if this were popular, there'd be a lot of multiple libraries. So.
But it's a fairly narrow sliver of objects, though. That's the thing, is that it's definitely within a certain range of objects, of things that you need occasionally, but you don't need all the time. Or like I said,
you don't need immediately too.
Right. So you do have things like Rent-A-Center, and you do have, the local supermarket does rent out carpet washers, which is one of those objects that falls into a very specific niche where it's worthwhile for them to rent them to you. You're not going to buy one yourself, but you're willing to rent it. I think pressure washers would fall into that. Car fixing tools, like if you need ramps and stuff like that.
Your crepe pan is not going to work, or a vacuum cleaner, because you're going to need that. There's going to be a mess, and you're going to need a vacuum cleaner to clean it up right away. You're not
vacuum cleaners, Vacuum cleaners are the kind of thing where you probably want to have that thing on a semi-permanent basis.
Yeah. You're going to use it, more than once a week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how you vacuum.
Right.
More than once a year.
How much of a slob you are. But you have that. But I mean, what are the things that I've bought recently that probably I could have shared? I don't. I know that's something I attached to a wall. That's a personal item. Definitely, books. I mean, that's why I love Libby so much. Right. I think Libby's fabulous. But the problem is, it's not generating any money for anybody, so the authors are not getting anything back.
The libraries buy the copies of books, and they buy them at a higher rate. I mean, they buy them at a higher price, actually, to kind of account for
balance it out. Yeah. So, but I'm becoming more of a fan of physical books. So it'd be nice, if I could go down to the library. But again, it's about immediacy. A lot of things are about immediacy.
Well, where is your nearest library? Do you know?
Oh yeah, it's about 7 blocks away, 10 blocks away.
But you want the drone.
What? Well,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
Well, no, it's a small branch library. They're not going to have what I want. They're not going to, statistically speaking, they're not going to have what I want.
Right.
In fact, the whole system may not have what I want. I mean, do they have 13 clocks at the Westcott branch, the Pettit branch, in Syracuse?
It's hard to say.
Highly unlikely.
And niche authors like Robert Whitehill that unlikely. But you can get digital, but you want a physical book. So, and then there are other problems, like everyone needs a snow shovel at a certain time. And if you rely on a library, there's, how many snow shovels can they have? They would need one for everybody. And then they need to store them, So
but the key thing about snow shovels is that's cheap. I mean, a snow shovel is a fairly inexpensive device. Like a carpet cleaner, to come back to that horrible thing I keep harping on. Yeah, that's a now as soon as you break like the $100 barrier, you're getting to things where people are going to start getting pissed off that they have to buy one and they only use it like 4 times in their entire life. Yeah. So that's the low hanging fruit, but who knows? But I thought I do like drones have the potential to do a lot of things. Now, if they make them quieter, and they put parachutes on them, which they've done. In fact, they put parachutes on the new taxi that's coming out, the drone taxi. cars, I mean, of course, the great thing would be is if you could hail them and they could drive themselves. I mean,
Yes.
that's the key thing. Is
Well,
that
yeah, and they are doing that in San Francisco. That's happening. And there's actually a movement. There's in protest of that. There's sort of a bicyclist movement out there where they're putting orange cones on top of or in front of cars, self-driving cars, so that they're stuck and they can't get out of the space. There is a protest. Maybe, and their point is we don't need more cars. This is just generating more cars. In theory, it shouldn't. In theory, it should lower the number of cars.
Right.
But I'm not sure that in practice it actually does.
Well, one way to find out.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, just do it. But it'd be really cool. I mean, if you do have a situation where I can take my smartphone and say, I need a car in the next 5 minutes. And it drives itself to my door, and I can get in it and go food shopping, and then drive it home and leave it there, and it goes off. And the economics, that'd be really cool. I think.
I mean, we do have a lot of this right now. It's all human generated. There is a mode of thought that says the future is actually much more human labor than robotic labor, because it's cheap. But which is sad. But there's all the food delivery services that exist now that sort of thrived during the pandemic. There's Uber, there's Lyft, there's Zipcar, which hasn't really done as well as I kind of thought it would. So there's sort of this sharing kind of morphing of taxis. That's all. It's also got its own set of problems. I don't know. I'm not sure that the library of things works. And if we talk to a real librarian, they may have some ideas about how that would shake out, or how that is shaking out in reality. Because everything works in my imagination.
Yeah, everything works great on the whiteboard. So what else? So you hit St. Andrew or St. Drew or whatever. What else? Andrewism.
Yeah. That's been the most interesting thing I've come across recently. Andrewism. Not a lot else. I'm trying to get through Piranesi with the daughters, but Zoe has a ton of homework every night, and so she doesn't get to sleep until after my youngest gets to sleep. So
reading time has been truncated.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
So what's in store for the weekend?
Catherine is racing in the Head of the Charles tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, great.
In a single, and she has been racing in the Head of the Charles in a single for 24 consecutive years. Yeah. And it's not easy to get in. So it's really quite an accomplishment. And I'll be taking the girls over to a boathouse up the Charles River near the finish line to watch her row by, and we're going to scream and yell.
That's great.
Yeah.
Didn't we do that once? Didn't you come to Philly one time? Yeah, you guys came down to Philly.
Yeah, we came down for Catherine did a race down there on the Schuylkill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. I mean, and she's been racing all over the place. She's gone to Lucerne. She's raced elsewhere in Europe. I can't remember where, but I do remember Lucerne. And she went to Australia to train.
Wow.
Yeah, she's serious about it.
Wow.
It's a big deal for her. So that will be fun. I don't know what the heck we're doing after that. I'm going to try and sleep a lot because I'm just feeling like crap, and I need to feel better. Yeah.
Well, on that uplifting note, how about we call it a day?
That's a good idea.
Okay.
All right, Lionel. Until next time.
Until next time, God willing.
Funny Not Funny is produced by Jim Infantino at Slab Media in Boston. Lionel Casson is the co-host. Our website is funnynotfunny.bigego.com. The background music you're listening to is the song Hum from Utopia Revisited by Jim Infantino. The opinions presented by the co-hosts are ridiculous and should not be taken seriously by anyone. Our intended audience is literally nobody. If you're listening to this podcast, you should stop immediately and seek help. Please do not subscribe or leave a rating or review. It only encourages us to make more. Thanks for listening.
So after we stopped recording, we kept talking, and then we realized we should be recording again. So we did.
So what I was talking to you about is people write all these books about like the Babylonians, how they lived. It's like we have no idea how they lived.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you've got like a couple of pot shards, and some inscriptions somewhere, and like the Epic of Gilgamesh or whatever, and it's not like we have like reams and megabytes of data about birth, death, and fertility and stuff like that. And one of the things I find fascinating is the charred scrolls that they found in Vesuvius.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear about this one?
Yeah, but No, we talked about the ashes of Vesuvius, the depth of the ashes and the animals. The skeletons, right? No, sorry, totally different topic.
They found a library. In fact, they found it a long time ago, and they found a library. So everything was in scrolls, these tightly wound scrolls.
Yeah,
the problem
charred,
is they've been charred, and there's no way you can unwrap them. They look like briquettes. I mean, they're literally like briquettes, and you basically can't touch. I mean, you don't even begin to think about unrolling them.
Right.
And finally, a bunch of teams around the world have put together like scanning electron blah 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 with computer program, and they're starting to read them.
Yeah.
Without unwrapping them, and they think it's a very, very large library of Epicurean philosophy.
Oh.
Because they think that it was actually a library that belonged to possibly an Epicurean philosopher, thinker, writer, intellectual. I'm probably mangling this horribly, but the cool news is that they have a lot of frickin' scrolls, and they can start reading them.
Right.
And so this is going to be an amazing window back into, what was it, 70 AD?
Yeah.
Because, as I mentioned, there's not a lot. We have stories, we have a book here and a book there, but that's been copied a million times. But to actually get our hands on an actual book from 70 AD, and I think there's like 100 of them or hundreds of these scrolls.
Yeah.
Now, they may all be like really crappy books, but still, it's going to be pretty amazing to see.
Just pornography. I mean, likely.
It's the Reader's Digest and stuff like that, or who knows? It's like or Harlequin romances from the Roman Empire.
That's right.
Hastily, she tore off his toga. Meet cute at the Herculaneum. But it'll be really fascinating to see it. So that's why I'm saying. And I think the guy Andrew sort of touches on this, is that it's really hard to make any kind of statement about what was happening like 15,000 years ago. I mean, we got some arrowheads.
Yeah, I mean, there is evidence of older civilizations than we had thought, but it's hard to say, right? It's hard to what kind of civilization was it? Was it hierarchical? Was it non-hierarchical?
Really tough.
Hard to say.
Hard to say.
I mean, Andrew makes a hard argument for, previous civilizations being non-hierarchical, but he leaves it open. And he does cite some evidence for it. But yes, I mean, anthropological, archaeological evidence, it is flawed.
And as I was mentioning to you before, they recently are using. So I'm always fascinated by the technological side. They're using researchers are using ground penetrating radar. They're using ground penetrating radar to scan the jungles of Central America for remains of pre-Columbian cities and structures, and they're finding them all over the place. They're finding far more than they ever expected to find. They're all just buried. So it's completely revamping everybody's idea about how widespread, how much population these civilizations were bearing.
Well, this was one of the points in Andrew's video about agriculture, was just that we think there was a dawn of agriculture because we think of agriculture in one specific way. There was agriculture. It just didn't look like what we're used to in Europe.
Right. The package, the Eurasian package.
Yeah.
One of the granddaddies of this is Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond, which has been very controversial, but I just like the the bizarreness of his thought. But there's a package, and it was plows, and it was wheat, and it was the four core domesticated animals like the horse, the chicken, the pig, the sheep. I think those are the food animals. It's like that. But in the New World, you had the three sisters, which is corn,
and that was agriculture. Yeah,
right. And that was a whole other way of doing it, of getting a lot of agriculture, getting a lot of output out of a given acre.
Corn, beans, squash.
Yeah.
And you farm together. And what I want to know more about is the Lenape people. The Lenape people practiced a radical form of agriculture that involved periodic burnings, and that it was remarkably successful. So that when people arrived in New York for the first time, they saw this wonderland, and they thought this was just nature. There was butterflies everywhere, great teeming masses of birds and fish just kind of falling out of the river, ready to be eaten. And this was really because of the way the Lenape people had treated the land for 6,000 years. And they just came along and thought, oh, good, something virgin. There's nobody here.
Right.
Excuse me. We've been here.
Yeah, we're over here.
We've been here a lot longer than you're going to be here, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's my argument for Andrew. But I would say it'd be great for us to take two sides of it. Pick a video and tear it apart, like you said.
Well, I don't want to tear it apart, but I just.
It's much more interesting.
Well, yeah, it's a little unfair. As I mentioned, part of my problem with it, not my problem with it, but it's just I'm sort of developing an allergic reaction to YouTube in general.
Okay.
With people saying, "Oh, you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
This is the massive conspiracy." It's like, dude.
Yeah. No. I mean, I preface that. I just think that he's actually done the work.
Yeah. There's something there.
That it's intellectually valid, and he is using a popular medium to get it across. And I don't think it's going to turn any big light bulbs on for us, but I think for a lot of people it will.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the key moment for me was, we've discussed this before, when I listened to this Planet Money podcast about modern monetary theory, MMR.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily agree with it or disagree with it, but what I loved is how they turned everything upside down.
Right.
And said, nah, we don't tax to spend. We actually just decide what we're going to spend, and then we print it. And we use taxation to bleed excess cash out of the economy so we don't run into inflation. That's what's really happening. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and this is where, my contention is money is a global religion, and that it is the one global religion that we all share, because we believe in the value of currency. But the recently, in writing my book, I've come to a chapter where I was really able to express Mardo's point of view on the deep issue with money. And he says to another character, because money is getting reintroduced, and he says it's a categorical mismatch. I mean, if I tell you how much you like this vase, or how much you like this tree, you'll say, I like it a lot. It's beautiful. It's got shade. It's physically pleasing. It's in good health. All that. The qualities are subjective qualities. If I ask you how many you like this tree, you'll say, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But that's what money is asking us to do. Put a number on how much you like it, and it's tied to sacrifice. Ultimately, it's tied to what will you sacrifice for this tree.
Right.
And that ties it back to religion. So somehow through the writing, I've kind of gotten a little closer to what the core problem is in terms of valuation in our religion, our common global religion. And that's why we're so unhappy. I mean, it's because we have to think of everything in the wrong way all the time.
That's an interesting statement. Is that are we really unhappy? And if so, is that why we're unhappy? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing to consider. I mean,
it's worth thinking about. Let's just say that's my proposition. I would say that it makes us profoundly unhappy to be thinking how many we like something rather than how much.
Well, the one thing I do know is that at particular point, if you have like in 1920, in 1900, yeah, if you want to build a railroad, you're going to need a lot of capital. You're going to need a lot of money. You're going to need a lot of people. You're going to need a lot of steel. And you're going to have these massive accumulations of capital and these massive coordinations of people to build a railroad. If that's what you want to do, if you want to build a railroad. And that's why, during the early part of the Industrial Revolution, you had these massive command and control structures and these massive accumulations of capital because you're building really, really, really big things. But now with the implementation of AI and with computer technology, I mean, I'm just stating what a million other people have stated much more eloquently than I have, which is that you just don't need this heavy industry anymore. You don't need this heavy command and control structures because you have computers that allow you to do it much more lightweight. And allow people, like in your books, there's all these nodes and these routers, and you have all these algorithms that are automatically sensing and weighing opinions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, getting at the subjective through percentiles rather than through points. Yeah,
right. And the thing is that a lot of perhaps the simplest way to say it is that a lot of what you believe your ideological structure is based a lot upon what your available technology is. And certain technologies, like if the way to get your music to a whole bunch of people at the same time is radio, well, that's gonna determine a lot of things. Whereas if the way to get your songs to a lot of people is on the internet, that's a different song and dance. And technology really forces you to change a lot of things. And the thing I see is that a lot of things that people see as eternal truths about what the economic system is and the reason why we do things is because this, and ideological. I'm like, I think a lot of it has to do with what kind of technology you have lying around. Like, do we have like a lot of iron lying around? Okay, let's use that. No, now we figured out how to take petroleum and distill it. Let's use that. I'm not a big fan of ideology. I'm a big fan of technology, and then people make up ideological reasons to justify. But I think a lot of it depends upon what kind of technology you have and what you can pull off. So I'm kind of, I hate to say hopeful, but I think we're certainly getting much more efficient about things. We're not digging up the earth and blowing up millions of stuff to make things. But the problem is there's now 8 billion of us. So even if per person we're doing a lot less damage to the environment, we got a lot more people. But I think, I don't know, I'm guardedly optimistic that, and we'll also start thinking, more people will start talking the way that we're talking here, which is that people will start rethinking things and saying, hey, what would it be like? And they won't be labeled commies. And they won't be labeled anarchists. And people just say, hey, could we do this another way? Like, can we just talk about that without like being put in jail? Is there a way that we could possibly do this whole thing without this or without money or without this or without that or without agriculture? Is there a way we could do away with agriculture and just print food or whatever, without being immediately arousing the ire of every agricultural related person.
You do eventually, but then if you've got 1 million, YouTube streams a day, it's kind of hard to put it down, but yeah. So the good news is I think maybe we're getting past a point where you're just going to be labeled, where you're going to be labeled a commie on this stuff. And you can actually start thinking about, how would we do this? Because one of the things I think about is, like I said, food. I think feeding people by planting a seed in the ground and waiting for it to grow up and then cutting it and then grinding it up. It's like, whoa, dude. I mean, is there a better way we can do this? I mean, can we print food? Right.
Can we just make it? Because the whole idea of like growing a cow and then killing it. Yeah. And then all that stuff. I mean, there's a moral issue to it. And there's also a huge resource issue to it and all that kind of stuff like that. Is there any way we can print this?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people say yes. And that's why these are the people who are making the Impossible Burger. And they're the people who are making this. But they're still relying upon stuff that's
growing out of the ground. I don't know that we can get away from growing things out of the ground. I'm not sure. I guess I have to think about it. I mean, That would be interesting.
You could. I mean, I think one of the things that will upend everything, if they manage to pull it off, is fusion energy. I don't know if they ever will, but if you do have an infinite supply of infinitely free, non-polluting energy, all kinds of doors start to open up.
Well, I know, and it's so funny because this is the thing that I always get stuck on, and I think I don't know if I'm a broken record on this, but listen, we have it. We have an amazing fusion reactor that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's just 8 light minutes away. Yep. And it's dumping energy on our planet all the time. What we need is a battery, right? We just need to like cover everything with collectors, and I'm talking about the sun. Cover everything with collectors, and then figure out some batteries.
Way. Yeah, and how to. That's true. If certainly we could collect enough energy right now. The problem is the storage and transmission technology. But again, if you get to that point where the cost, look what happened when the cost of moving a bit from one side of the planet to another dropped by a factor of 10 million, which is what happened.
Yeah.
It changed the world.
Oh yeah. And the other thing, of course, if you had limitless free energy, you'd find that everybody wanted limitless free energy. Right?
Well, that's the problem.
Right? The use expands to the capacity.
Right. But the key thing you could do at that point is you could seriously start thinking about things like, atomic assembly, really radical ways of putting things together, because you got all the energy in the world. The energy's free.
Eric Chasen said, even with fusion, we end up with a heating problem no matter what. We will end up generating heat from all that energy, and that heat ultimately is going to get reflected back down. If you've got a lot of, even without the greenhouse gases, you end up with an energy problem. He had done the math back in the 80s, and he was like, we can postpone this, but we're going to have a heat problem.
Yeah. So you have to be like Larry Nivens. You have to be like the puppeteers, and you have to actually move the earth.
The puppeteers.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. The hindmost.
Okay. Let's call it.